Good afternoon. My name is Eric Fancher, and I serve as administrator for the Birmingham Land Bank Authority. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We are trying a new platform on YouTube, so bear with us as we go through this change. But we hope this will be able to reach a lot more viewers and a lot more participants. So we'll get started in a couple of minutes. Okay, good afternoon. My name is Eric Fancher. I serve as administrator for the Birmingham Land Bank Authority. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to try and get through our slide deck um, as quickly as possible, and so that we can get some of your additional questions if we need to. But I will go ahead and get started with just an overview. We're going to do a mix of frequently asked questions mixed with information on our programming, because I think they all do work hand in hand together. A little bit on the Birmingham Land Bank Authority. The Land Bank Authority was established to acquire the tax delinquent properties of local governments, other properties located within the city of Birmingham, and tax delinquent properties in order to remove blight, provide housing, and stabilize neighborhoods for the citizens of Birmingham. So, in short, our goal is to put these problem tax delinquent properties and other properties that end up in our inventory back into productive use. I wanted to start out with one of the many questions, statements that we receive, and I just wanted to go ahead and attack it first. We hear often, I heard that the land bank isn't working right. Why isn't it working like so and so? We hear, why isn't it working like Detroit, like in Ohio, or some other program? And to first, get into that question, we have to realize, land banks across the United States all have, basic powers, um, but they all differ, state by state. Basically, just like Birmingham's land bank, the legal structure of the land bank will have it be a public entity. Birmingham's is a public municipal corporation. We are governed by a board of directors. Our bottom line mission is to acquire tax delinquent, vacant, abandoned properties and to connect it to responsible end users. Our acquisition powers are special in that we have a unique ability to acquire properties from the Alabama Department of Revenue at an expedited rate. But also, you have to remember that the period in which we can acquire properties from the State Department of Revenue is 5 years after the date of tax sale. So before the land bank even comes in the picture, these properties that are sitting in its inventory or eligible for its programming are still available at the Jefferson County tax sale or through the Alabama State Department of Revenue. Um, Through our programming, we have the ability to manage the vacant and abandoned properties. We can hold them tax exempt. We can utilize them through our lot lease programs. We can take actions to convey the properties out through our quiet title program. And the method of those dispositions are outlined in our policies and procedures as adopted by our board of directors. So a lot of things that you must take into consideration when you're looking at land banks across the country. Each land bank's powers depends on its state enabling legislation, its priority in which it can access eligible properties. In Alabama, as I mentioned before, Alabama Land Banks, Birmingham Land Bank has to wait 5 years from the date of the tax sale. We are actively seeking legislative changes to this. We would like to see that period brought down to 3 years, and we hope that we'll be successful in this legislative session. But that still puts us behind a lot of other, institutional investors, people who are just seeking to speculate and buy and hold the properties. And so each time a speculator or individual that doesn't intend to fix up a property purchases a tax deed or tax certificate, they hold that property often for a few years, and our city's public works still has to maintain the properties because there's no incentive for that individual to maintain the properties. They are only looking to, sell the property or flip the property at a later date. And oftentimes when they don't realize that sale, or they don't, the activity that they thought would happen in a certain area, when that doesn't take place, they end up not paying any more taxes, and the property rolls back into tax delinquency. That doesn't make it any easier for the land bank to take ownership of that property, because the clock in which the 5 years must run starts over again. So, oftentimes we suffer, we are really at a detriment when, buy and hold investors and speculators purchase tax deeds and then let them go, because it just pushes that property further and further away from the land bank being able to intervene in its deterioration. Alabama's state tax foreclosure process differs from that of, most of the other states in the United States. When many states like Michigan and Ohio enact land banking legislation, they also have comprehensive reform in their tax foreclosure process. In Alabama, when properties go to the tax sale, the local taxing authority notifies the last assessed owner and maybe one or two other people. They don't pull title to find out who has full fee and simple ownership to the properties, or they don't notify every single interest holder. And so that, without that due process and that taking, many title insurance insurers and other financial institutions will not usually, issue mortgages on tax deeds or tax certificates. They won't issue title insurance on tax deeds. And so Birmingham's Land Bank must go through what's called Mennonite due process. We use that in our what's called quiet title action, in which we pull title to a property. We notify every single person that is listed on that title report that has had an interest in that property, that's put a lien on the property. If the city has cut the grass and placed an assessment on the property, we notify the city, the county, every individual we have to notify through our legal process. So we serve the individual owners if they're located in Jefferson County. We publicize the notice of the court hearing in the local Birmingham Times. We place a 4-foot by 4-foot sign on the subject property. And we also send certified mail to the representatives of each interest holder found on the title report. And that process, costs a significant amount of money and time. Over the years, from the beginning of this process, it took over a year to go through the process, but we've, fortunately worked out a lot of the hurdles, and it usually takes our attorneys 4 to 6 months to get through that quiet title process. Also, another thing in play is collaboration with the host municipality. The majority of major land banks throughout the country receive a significant, if not majority, of their funding from the host municipality or county. Funding also, when I say, support and funding, also, there has to be collaboration and coordination inside of a municipal government or county government, there has to be communication between, the planning departments, the public works departments, the executive departments of that governmental agency. And so it's just important to take a lot of those things into consideration when looking at, a specific entity's role in neighborhood revitalization. Along the lines of more funding, we also must work with local and state governmental leaders to be innovative on these funding sources. In Ohio, we have what's called delinquent tax fees and other demolition fees that fund community development programs and land banking programs. There is a land bank in, that borders that's jurisdiction includes Cleveland, which is a Cuyahoga land bank. Through these fees, they receive millions and millions of dollars each year, and that goes into, its efforts to, improve neighborhoods, demolish abandoned structures, acquire problem properties, dispose of problem properties. Also, there are different collection mechanisms out there following the disposition of a property from a land bank. So, many land banks throughout the country have what's called 5 for 50, 3 for 75. And that basically means for 5 years, the Land Bank Authority will recapture 50% of that tax revenue that's brought in subsequent to its sale. Or as you can see when I say 3 to 75, for 3 years, that entity can capture 75% of those collections. So, it's time for, not only Birmingham, but other municipalities throughout the state of Alabama to get together and figure out, some other creative funding mechanisms in which we can support neighborhood revitalization. Another piece of this puzzle is, evaluating the capacity of our end users. Each end user or individual, nonprofit, for-profit developer that seeks to work with the land bank must be committed and able to complete projects on the properties acquired through the land bank. So, as I mentioned before, in Alabama, properties become eligible for land bank programming 5 years after being deemed sold to state. That means 5 years after the tax sale was held at the county courthouse, and that means the property wasn't sold at that tax sale. After it's not sold at tax sale, it's deemed sold to state. As I mentioned before, Alabama tax foreclosure process does not satisfy due process, so we have to go through that quiet title process. The cost to go through the process and acquire fee simple ownership of these tax delinquent properties are among the highest in the country. Although, we still negotiate a lower amount, it's still a, reduced rate quiet title action. The average cost in other states may be in the hundreds of dollars rather, than thousands like you see in Alabama. But the silver lining in all of that is that through our process, we extinguish the municipal liens and assessments, and we, basically extinguish any issue of clouded title to any of the parcels. So a little bit about the land bank. We are the first and only land bank in the state of Alabama to successfully take a property interest from tax deed to fee simple ownership and to be able to get insurable title. We've developed a group of capable and willing attorneys that perform these expedited quiet title actions at a fixed rate, saving time and money. And it's really a public service because the margins are so small in each of these quiet title actions, relative to the cost and the expenses and what's actually paid out. So we really do appreciate the attorneys that work with us. We have established a process in which numerous cases can be brought collectively to court, saving time and money. And we now are able to obtain title insurance to properties that were previously difficult, if not impossible, for title insurers to write policies on. As I mentioned before, we've cut the process of obtaining clear title from over 6 years from date of tax sale to 4 to 6 months. We've created a clear process that allows, many of the underwater, unmarketable parcels to come back into productive use following the extinguishment of municipal liens and assessments. We have sold over 290 parcels to a majority of individuals and citizens in the city of Birmingham, but also to nonprofits that are in the business of facilitating large-scale housing and commercial development projects. Even this past week, we sent 20 more parcels to closing, and we anticipate to send another 20 in this next week. And so at that point, it's on our purchasers to complete closing and go on and commence their projects. And through it all, since 2017, we've cleared title to over 500 parcels in the city of Birmingham. I think that's a record in the state of Alabama, and we anticipate clearing 300 more even during the first half of this next year. So the process has been solidified with our attorneys, with the court system, with Jefferson County Probate, Tax Assessor, and Tax Collector's Office. And so we are more than pleased with how things have progressed over the last 4 to 5 years since the inception of this program. So the Birmingham Land Bank and land banking in general is not a silver bullet. It's not going to be the cure-all in neighborhood revitalization. Neighborhood revitalization is always going to involve the coordination of code enforcement, increased code enforcement capabilities and powers, infrastructure improvements, public investment in community and economic development programming, smart planning and implementation. That means coordinating these plans across public agencies and governmental departments, private dollars, and most important, citizen input and participation. So I've said my spiel about land banking in Alabama. I'll move over into some more information regarding the Birmingham Land Bank Authority. Number one, who is eligible to acquire property through the Birmingham Land Bank Authority? Individuals, governmental entities, nonprofits, for-profits are all eligible to acquire property through the Birmingham Land Bank Authority. But there are some additional qualifications, including the applicant must not own any tax delinquent property or previously have lost any property to tax foreclosure. So if you're applying for a property and you've just, you're one of those people that have bought like 10 tax deeds and you just let those go into tax delinquency last year, you're not going to be eligible for this program. We also ask that applicants must not have defaulted on prior BLBA agreements. We have a number of applicants that have entered into contract with the Land Bank Authority to purchase the property and rehab the property. And a number of those applicants have backed out prior to closing, or they have closed in the properties and attempted to turn around and sell the property for profit without any investment, or they just continue to let the property sit. And our Public Works Department, must still often go out and cut the grass or write the property up for code deficiencies. Applicants also must not own properties that have code violations or any other local violations on the property. So if you have property that's not tax delinquent but is falling in, or you're a slumlord, or just an absentee property owner, if you're sitting in that situation, you usually will not be eligible for our program. Through the application process, we do request information on all parcels that each applicant owns within the city of Birmingham, and we reserve the right to examine each applicant's properties from the right-of-way for code violations, or go through and examine municipal court records or code enforcement records in order to make sure that we are conveying properties to responsible end users. Forgive me, I'm trying to get to the next slide. So which properties are eligible for purchase through the BLBA? So the BLBA can acquire tax deeds to properties located within the city limits of the city of Birmingham, and as I mentioned before, they must have been tax delinquent for at least 5 years. Is every property that the Birmingham Land Bank acquires available for purchase? So oftentimes, people will look on our website and, look for a particular property that they may have been told is owned by the land bank, and they won't see it on our website as available for application. At any time, you can submit an inquiry through our contact page to, inquire on the eligibility of that property. But sometimes the land bank will hold these properties so that we can, assemble sites for potential redevelopment, or we'll be working with the city's planning department or community development department to make sure that the property is, adhering to the city's framework plan, and that it's going to be used in a manner that's consistent with any plans adopted by the community. So, sometimes the property may be in the land bank's possession, but it may not be available for application yet because it's under evaluation by land bank staff or city staff, so that we can determine the highest and best use. How can I acquire property through the Birmingham Land Bank Authority? It's easy. You don't have to come up to our office cash in hand. You don't have to, show up and fill out a paper application. You just visit our website and apply online through our application portal. We currently have 3 programs: our lot lease program, which is our side lot and adopt a lot program, the quiet title program, and the immediate acquisition program. Our lot lease program is the 2-year maintenance program, which is geared towards our neighborhood residents who, live in the same neighborhood, either adjacent to the eligible property or on the same block or nearby in the same neighborhood of the eligible property. We do take some additional steps to verify this information. So citizens and nonprofits can participate in this program. The nonprofit must be based in that specific neighborhood, or they may seek a waiver with our board if they're not wholly based in that neighborhood, but the bulk of their activities have to be taking place in that neighborhood and with the goals of uplifting that neighborhood. Properties that are eligible for this program must be vacant lots that don't have a permanent structure on the property. And, some of the uses that we see through this program are gardens. We see adjacent property owners using it to extend their current yard. We see adjacent property owners that just have a vested interest in the beautification of their community, and they want to keep the lot maintained rather than, waiting on an absentee property owner to maybe cut it every 2 years, or, waiting on Public Works to expend valuable time maintaining a lot that's not owned by the city. So we do appreciate our lot lease applicants and participants because, they play a vital role in, taking back control of many of these problem properties that litter our city. So that lot lease process, and I'll tell you, the application process for our 3 programs pretty much is the same for the first 3 steps. You will submit your application online. Staff will review the application. Once staff reviews the application, they'll submit it for board approval. After the board approves the application, staff will request the tax deed from the State of Alabama Department of Revenue. Once we receive and process that tax deed, we will call in the applicant, execute the contract, the applicant will pay its fees, and then the agreement term will commence. That agreement term is 2 years. And in that agreement, you'll agree to maintain the property in guidance with local, zoning and just local zoning and municipal rules. And you will just, continue with whatever plan that you stated you were going to go through with, if it's a garden or lot maintenance. We just want you to maintain the property, keep it, free from weeds, free from being a nuisance, free from excessive trash. And at the expiration of that period, you'll have 3 options. The first option will be to move into what's called the quiet title program, which I will go over in 1 second. But through that program, you'll have the ability to obtain fee simple ownership of that property. The next option is to receive a quitclaim deed to that property. The quitclaim deed is just a legal document that transfers what the land bank's ownership interest is in that property at that current moment. So, we are working to, subsidize and, figure out a way to subsidize the quiet title process for our citizens and residents that are based in these neighborhoods. But that process cleans out the what we would normally convey through the quitclaim deed. So the quitclaim deed will be what interest we've had as transferred to us from the State Department of Revenue. So if there's a house that was torn down on the property, chances are the city has a demolition lien on it. If the city's cut that grass anytime prior to the land bank taking tax title to it, then chances are there may be a weed assessment on the property. So it's important to really evaluate the situation when making this decision following the expiration of your agreement. We want everyone to go through the quiet title process so that you can have this property to own in fee simple ownership. But we also understand that everyone's situation is different, and we try to work with each and every one of our applicants. And the third option is to walk away from the property, which we hope no one takes that step. Our next program is the Quiet Title Program. That program involves parcels in which obviously they have to be BLBA eligible, 5 years tax delinquent. They can have structures on them. They generally must be residential parcels. But in the event that a commercial or other parcel is identified for a specific use, you may always contact staff through our contact form to make a case for making the property eligible for application through our program. So again, in addition to basic participant eligibility, you can't own any tax delinquent property, code deficient property. In your plan and application for this program, you must demonstrate sufficient capability to complete whatever project that you outline in your application. We have people that have stated that they want to build gardens, so we ask them to submit a plan just outlining all considerations that they must take in evaluating that process. Access to water, access to equipment, and all the infrastructure that goes into constructing a community garden or just a neighborhood garden. So the big pieces in this are just demonstration of your financial capacity and your planning capacity to show that you have really thought out all aspects of what goes into that process. And we do give you some prompts in the application. We don't have just a page that says, tell us about your project. We try and, guide each applicant into, providing the information that would be most helpful for staff and the board to evaluate each application. The base price for this program is $5,500. For owner occupants, if you find a house that you plan on renovating for yourself to move into, that base price is $5,000. And again, the application process near the front end mirrors that of the lot lease program. You submit your application. Once it's approved and the board and land bank receive the tax deed from the State Department of Revenue, we will execute a contract with you. You'll have an inspection period upon which at the end of, you'll decide if you want to go through with the project or back out. If you decide to go through, we ask that you deposit your earnest money, and that earnest money is then deposited to the attorney in their trust account so that they can draw down and perform the quiet title action. So once the earnest money is deposited and the contract is executed, the attorney commences the quiet title action. And this is, as I mentioned before, usually takes about 4 to 5 months. Following the end of that court action and the end of the final hearing, we send the property documents to our closing attorney and the contract and closing papers, and that attorney reaches out to the purchaser and y'all perform that closing, and the property is conveyed to the end user, subject to restrictions outlined in the contract. As we move forward through this program, our applicants are required to execute a limited power of attorney in favor of the Birmingham Land Bank Authority. This is meant to protect the Land Bank Authority and the applicant during that compliance period, which follows next. So, each application is going to be different, but, many of our applicants, state they're going to rehab a house or they're going to build a house. And in your contract, again, we provide prompts in the contract and in the exhibits. You will outline the timeline of your project, who your contractor is, the scope of the work. And we use that to basically evaluate the project during that compliance period to make sure that the project is ongoing and moving in the right direction. This isn't meant to be a gotcha. This isn't meant to unfairly burden any applicant or purchaser. It's meant to make sure that, the land bank, after expending staff time, extinguishing municipal liens and assessments, going through that quiet title process, make sure that the end user is doing what they said they were going to do. So following the end of that compliance period, which ends at the time of the completion of the project, that limited power of attorney is released and the property is released for the end user to do what they see fit. But our main goal is to make sure these problem properties become assets to the community. Our immediate acquisition program is basically the same thing as our quiet title program, except for this program involves parcels that have already gone through the quiet title process. So as I mentioned before, we've taken over 500 parcels through the quiet title process, and a number of our applicants have backed out on closing on those properties due to lack of money, due to other circumstances. And so we routinely put those properties up for sale through this immediate acquisition process. We also work to identify houses and structures throughout the city that look right for redevelopment. They look like they're houses that may be able to be rehabbed quicker than others. And so we often go out and acquire tax deeds to those properties, clear title to them, and make them available under this immediate acquisition process. And these properties will be visible on our website. They'll be on our map noted as immediate acquisition eligible properties. And the application process, again, is the same. You apply, submit your application. Following the approval of your application, you have a contract and inspection period. And following the inspection period, you can schedule a closing with our closing attorney and, again, start your compliance period. One of the most frequent questions that we receive each and every day from people knocking on our door is, hey, I'm looking for a move-in ready house, or hey, I want to flip a house with little to no investment. What do you have for me? And in reality, the answer is nothing. As I mentioned before, these properties that are eligible for our programming are 5 years tax delinquent or more, sometimes 20, 30, 40 years tax delinquent. And prior to their even going into tax delinquency, the majority of them had serious code deficiencies. There were holes in roofs, and so many other factors. So, the majority of the parcels and properties that go through our program have been deteriorating for a long time, and we rarely see properties that are, move-in ready or ready just to have, inhabit with little to no investment. The ones that we do see in that situation are ones that are occupied, and we do not process, occupied properties through this program. We receive this question: why can't you all just give properties to those who have been taking care of it or to nonprofit organizations for free or at a discounted rate? The things you have to consider in this situation are the expenses. We, as I mentioned before, each quiet title action costs us around $5,000. And, we have to recoup that money. Each year we are working with our board and in the formation of a nonprofit to accept donations. And generate other revenues to subsidize this quiet title action for nonprofit organizations or our elderly citizens or neighborhood residents that have been taking care of properties adjacent to their parcels. But at this point, we don't have the capacity to subsidize every conveyance. We also have to evaluate the capacity of the end user. So oftentimes when individuals or nonprofits come to us saying, I just, need this property, and, they scrape around enough money just to purchase the property, we often see the property continue to sit following our conveyance to them. And so we really have to evaluate the capacity of each end user through the application process. We hope in the future that there'll be an increase in, rehab programming and other programming out there to help aid in, the, addition of more affordable housing in the city of Birmingham. Why do you charge so much? $5,000 is not a little bit of money, but that $5,000 has no fluff in it. It encompasses our quiet title attorney's fees, the cost for publications, which usually runs us $400, $500, $600 for each case, court cost of service. It means cost to get someone to go out and serve papers to people in person, cost of certified mail, cost to place signage, pay for signage, and so on and so forth. We also have to pay for a guardian ad litem during each court case. That guardian ad litem is appointed by the judge, and the fees vary from each case, and they depend on each judge and each guardian ad litem. We'll see in one court those fees be $500 or $600, and we'll see in another court fees, amounting to $2,000 or more. So it's just a variable that we have no control over, but we have to cover in our quiet title fees. As I mentioned before, we received this question a lot. Can the Birmingham Land Bank Authority acquire commercial property? Yes. We can acquire any property that has been tax delinquent for 5 years or more. We're working to, identify eligible parcels that we can make available on our website, but we try to, be as careful as possible in evaluating those parcels before we just put them on the website for application. If you do identify a commercial parcel or any other type of parcel that's not listed that interests you, you can always submit an inquiry through our Contact Us page and tell us, about your plans, and we can, make that parcel available if we deem it appropriate. I have cash in hand and I'm ready to close on the property I want now. Why can't I walk into the land bank office and purchase the property? As I mentioned before, each one of these tax deed properties has to go through the quiet title process. Each one of these applications has to go through our application process. In addition to evaluating, the ability of each end user to complete a project, state law bars us from transferring property for investment purposes only for future speculation. We know that, any purchase through this property is for, at the end of the day, to make some sort of money if you're not going to move into the property. But transfers solely for investment purposes or speculation where you don't plan to maintain the lot, improve the lot at all, that's barred by our state enabling legislation. We also are barred from laundering out parcels that the prior owner has approached us on, and with the hopes of us, extinguishing tax delinquency or liens or assessments on the property. We received that request many times. Often, individuals will come in after they just let a property sit for 6 or 7 years and ask us to, clear off the back taxes for them or clear off the demolition lien on the house they just left to rot. And the authority is barred from doing that. And so that is the, importance of the application process. That's the importance of, going through the board process and staff review process. during the application process, if multiple parties apply for the same parcel, who prevails? So the land bank abides by its priorities for disposition outlined in our policies and procedures. I don't expect y'all to read this right now, but they are available on our website. The board has authorized, these priorities as a guide for decision making in the application process. So if, someone who approaches us to purchase a property for the purposes of owner occupancy applies for a parcel, and someone who wants to rent out the property applies with the same, and they have the same supporting information, the person with the plan to occupy the house is going to prevail. And so these priorities guide us in our decision making. They aren't absolute. We do retain flexibility in decision making on choosing which application prevails, because there may be someone that plans to own and occupy a house that only provided information saying they plan to paint the house and the house is falling in, whereas someone who plans to rent out the house has provided evidence that they have considered all aspects of framing, plumbing, mechanical, roofing, and the whole financial investment that it will take to bring the property back. So we will often take that application above the one that's ranked higher in the priorities for disposition. So this list isn't absolute. We do utilize basically the totality of circumstances in the application, but it does provide us a guide in which two applications that are basically equal on all ends, but in uses are put in for the same property. We see this a lot when we explain this application process and the quiet title process. People say, I can obtain property from the state quicker than the Birmingham Land Bank process. Why go through the Birmingham Land Bank? And the answer is, it all depends on your plan for the property. If your plan is to be a speculator, to just get the tax deed and flip it, yeah, you might want to go through the state, because that activity is barred through land bank programming. The beauty of the land bank process is that we take out your having your requirement to have to go through an attorney to clear title, to pay back municipal liens and assessments, and the time period. We cut that time period from 1 to 2 years going through the court system to 4 to 6 months. And that is, the whole point of this program is to make acquisition of these problem properties financially feasible. And I think we have done a great job over the last few years, ramping that process up and establishing a process with our attorneys to take a huge number of properties through the quiet title process. Our goal is to, have fee simple ownership vested in the authority on each parcel so that we can convey full ownership to each end user. This clears up many issues with the financing of projects, construction, development financing, mortgage financing, issues with clouded title and wills and trusts. But also, when you go to the city of Birmingham for land use approvals, zoning changes, subdivision, or additions, adding the property to an adjacent parcel, most of those approvals will require fee simple ownership. So if your plans involve, actually developing the property, a desire to hold the property and, make it yours and to pass on to your family, to actually, build something on the property, then your best bet is to go through our programming. But that decision, again, is up to you. Who is responsible for the governance and operations of the Birmingham Land Bank Authority? So the Birmingham Land Bank Authority is governed by a board of directors. There are 7 members. 4 members are appointed by the council, and 3 members are appointed by the mayor's office. The board of directors initially operated a funding agreement with the city of Birmingham that outlines the employment of city staff for daily management and operations of the authority. So Mrs. Joanne Burrow, Chelsea Law, and Elliot Smith, we are the city staff of the Birmingham Land Bank Authority. We have been assigned to work and support the operations of the authority. So the Land Bank Authority is a public municipal corporation. It was incorporated by the City of Birmingham, staffed by City of Birmingham employees, and the majority of funds are allocated from the City of Birmingham. We were incorporated with the intention to aid the City of Birmingham and its citizens in neighborhood revitalization. So I'll get into this question. We received this morning. Why does the Birmingham Land Bank Authority close the application process periodically? Or why does application review take an extended amount of time sometimes? So we rely on the support of the City of Birmingham, and for us to have continuity in operations, we have to have things like our funding agreement in place. We hope to have our latest funding agreement put in place fairly soon. We submitted it over 15 months ago, and that basically outlines not only funding, but departmental cooperation and collaboration, which allows the land bank to plan forward. We are working to, complete a strategic plan this year, and that involves the full cooperation and collaboration with, the City of Birmingham and our partner agencies. Without that agreement, systems break. We, continue to reach out and hope to grow our staff to evaluate our applications. We've received over 5,500 applications, and we've evaluated each and every one of them. So we, are proud of the bulk of the work that our team is taking on. But we just have to continue to stress that collaboration is key. Starting in 2019, the authority went 375 days without vehicles, starting in the fall of 2019. That put a hold on application review, quiet title action, commencement, acquisitions, and compliance. So we still have to work through a number of issues as far as cooperating and working internally and externally for operations and applications to continue moving forward. How can I support efforts in neighborhood revitalization? Our biggest piece of advice is that you become engaged. You advocate for dialogue and funding on these related topics, code enforcement, community development, economic development. Stay engaged with the land bank through our website and social media. You can always feel free to message us with questions or topics that you'd like to see us cover in these sessions, or if you'd like us to point you in the direction of, information on specific topics in community development. We, in addition to land bank staff, we are based in the Department of Community Development at the City of Birmingham, and our departmental leadership, those individuals have a wealth of knowledge in, federal programming, housing, code enforcement, and other items. So there is a wealth of information at the City of Birmingham, not only in community development and economic development, in our planning departments. And those city employees are all committed to the improvement of our neighborhoods and communities in the City of Birmingham. You can also attend our board meetings. They take place usually on the first Thursday of each month, and you'll find more information on how to attend those board meetings on our website at birminghamlandbank.org. You can also check out Center for Community Progress, Grounded Solutions, and other groups that provide resources on neighborhood revitalization. But also it's important to engage your neighbors and your elected leaders on these topics and to push them to do more. It isn't enough just to, always say, we want houses, we want this, we want this. Engage your leaders, your neighbors, the city employees to find out how you can do more to advocate for these items and push. So as I mentioned before, the land bank operates on partnership. At the beginning of this presentation, I spoke on, the main goal of the land bank is to, acquire these tax delinquent problem properties and put them back into productive use. That means putting them into productive use with end users that will maintain or develop the property and pay taxes on the property. We're building a program in which our citizens and developers are our biggest partners. So we just we want to continue to stress that we do rely on our end users and purchasers to move forward and complete their projects. So now we have a section on other questions, and y'all bear with me. Let me see if we have any questions. Okay, we do have one question. The $5,500 fee applies for all parcels no matter how big or how small they are. So the $5,500 fee is a basic fee. That's the base fee for each parcel that goes through our quiet title process. If we get into if we acquire an eligible parcel and an evaluation determine it's a high value parcel, we'll usually go by the taxes, make it available at the tax assessed value or market value, depending on whatever the market in that area commands. But in doing that, we are not trying to make prices exorbitant or anything. We want to make sure in pricing our properties that, participants are still able to complete projects. Participants are still able to, acquire the properties and just, follow through with their projects. But we do have to, make a profit and bring in revenue for the operations of the authority where we can. Unfortunately, the majority of the parcels throughout the city of Birmingham are in areas where values are depressed, and so we can't necessarily pull in additional monies to go towards operations. So where we can find high value properties or commercial properties that provide an opportunity for the authority to bring in additional operational funds, we will charge that higher amount. But we will always be fair. I will tell you that. That looks like the only question I received. So want to go ahead and close out. As I mentioned before, we ask that you please make best efforts to stay engaged with the Land Bank. We do have a Facebook page, an Instagram page, website, but you can always go to our website, submit questions through our Contact Us page, and a member of our staff will work to answer your question as quickly as possible. We also, again, we'll make ourselves available for additional presentations. We try to have these Wednesday seminars each week, but if you have a specific group that you'd like us to address, at this point via Zoom or WebEx or video conferencing, we'd be happy to make arrangements to, share our message and work with you to share that information. If you have a neighborhood organization or nonprofit that is interested in taking part in this program, we ask that you just reach out to us, and we will make our best efforts to accommodate you and speak with you and arrange for the hosting of one of these talks. I'm going to check one more time for questions. Oh, we have another question. The property list on the website. So each year, the properties become eligible for our program each year following the May tax sale. And we basically upload that listing after the Department of Revenue sends that list to us in May. So chances are, many of the properties may not be eligible anymore if they've been purchased through the State Department of Revenue, because we don't have that data at the time. We are working on doing more periodic updates on that property list. But as it currently stands, that list is really updated once or twice a year at most. As the land bank takes title to those properties or requests those properties, they are taken off the website. And as we introduce them into programming, they are taken off the website. But you can always, if you see something that interests you, you can always verify its eligibility by following some steps that are outlined on our website. We do have a process for, outline where you can input the parcel number into the state's inventory and see if it still sits there, or you can also see if it sits in the land bank's inventory. So again, if there's any question on the eligibility of a parcel that you see on our website, just send it to us in the contact page and we will get back with you as soon as possible. Lately, our closings have been taking place virtually or not in person. We do have a few in-person closings, but our closing attorneys make best efforts to accommodate each and every purchaser. Okay, it is about 12:58. I cannot believe I kept this underneath an hour long. I thank you all for taking the time to spend this 12 o'clock hour with us. This presentation will be hosted on our YouTube page and posted on our website, so you can come back and view it anytime that you want. I'll also make these slides available so you don't have to hear my voice. But either way, we look forward to working with each and every one of you. We look forward to fielding more questions and just working with you in efforts to, revitalize the city of Birmingham. There's a lot of opportunity out there, and there's a lot of need, and we need each and every one of you, in addition to, the city of Birmingham and other entities. We need each individual, each private, sector, business, each nonprofit, all to band together to improve our neighborhoods and communities. So again, thank you so much. Stay tuned, stay engaged through our website, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.